everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Bookish Protect. Today I'm joined with Bernard Cornwell, finally. I'm such a big fan, so I'm very excited to be here. And this is in honour of the Saxon series, The Last Kingdom, which is actually going to be on BBC Two later this year. And I've just got the privilege of finally talking to you about the books. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, Cinzia, thank you for asking me.
Now, I would like to start by just discussing how excited you are about this being televised, because obviously there has been a television series of the Sharp series. This is on the BBC now, and it seems to be a lot of production. So how do you feel about that finally being made?
I'm thrilled. I mean, obviously, it's terrific, and equally surprised. I mean, I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago someone said, oh, Carnival Films wants to make a TV series about The Last Kingdom. I thought, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Because you never do believe it, you know. I mean, people are always saying we want to do a movie or something, and it never ever happens. Well, it's happened. But I haven't seen any of it.
Oh, you haven't seen any of it?
I haven't seen any of it. When you see it, I'll see it, you know, and not until then. But I know it's going to be terrific. It's great. I mean, these are wonderful people. They've got a terrific cast. Alexander Draymond, Matthew McFadden, Emily Cox, Rutger Hauer. I mean, it's an extraordinary cast. And they're going to bring their creative imagination to it. And
I was curious about, as a book reader, and obviously I watch television series a lot of books, and I always wonder how much input an author has, but I guess the impression
Well, I guess the author could have input. And they very kindly said to me, did I want to have any? I said no, I don't want to be involved at all.
Oh wow.
No, not in the least. I don't want. And they actually very kindly sent me the scripts, and I never even bothered to open them. Not because I don't care.
Just purely.
No, look, I used to work for television.
Oh right. Okay.
40 years ago, I was a television producer, and the one thing I know is that I know nothing about producing television drama. And these people do. These people know all there is to know about, and they did Downton Abbey, for God's sake. They know about making television drama. What possible thing can I contribute?
You don't feel like you're losing control of any of your characters or freedom of...
No, I think I'm giving my characters to some incredibly clever, creative people. And they're going to add to it. I mean, when they made the Sharp films, Pete Postlethwaite played Hakeswill. It was far better than my Hakeswill, far better. And then every subsequent book I wrote, I was writing Sean Bean. I wasn't writing the Sharp I'd originally written.
How?
You don't hire actors of this caliber and say to them, you're going to play it this way just as Bernard Cornwell wrote it. You've got to let them be creative too. You've got to let the script writers be creative, the director, everybody. They're bringing all this to these stories. So in fact, you, the reader, the viewer, is getting more.
Than what I mean, that's very similar to how a reader anyway gets the book. You know, we create our own imagination, so it's just freedom. But I'd like to ask you, because I've heard other interviews of you in the past talk about this, the importance of the Saxon period to you, because this is obviously the 9th and 10th century that it's set in, and you said a lot about Alfred the Great being a very strong symbol of England is today, and I was wondering, does that still resonate?
Well, most historical novels have a big story and a little story. The big story in Gone with the Wind was Can the South win the Civil War? The little story is Can Scarlett save Tara? And you flip them. You put the little story in the foreground and the big story in the background. And the story I wanted to tell is a story that for some strange reason the English don't know, which is, where did England come from? If you go back to the year 800, 850, there is no such place as England. Even the word doesn't exist. There are other kingdoms. There's Wessex, there's East Anglia, there's Mercia, there's Northumbria, there had been Bernicia, there had been Deira, there had been all sorts of kingdoms. But no England. So where does England come from? And, you know, we sing there'll always be an England, but there wasn't always an England. So that is the big story, which you put in the background. And yet I wanted to tell that story, which is just to say to you, look, this is part of our history. It's a part of our history that we ought to know and we ought to celebrate. And, of course, Alfred is terribly, terribly important. He doesn't make England, but he dreams of it. And it is very much Alfred's dream that there will be one country which unites all the people who speak the English tongue. And just before he died, he called himself the king of all the people who speak English. But he's not yet king of England, because England doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist until his grandson really creates it.
How fantastic. No, I now wanted to ask you about that, because when you're writing historical, because obviously you know a lot about history, why did you pick to write fiction, though, and not non-fiction? I'm always curious. I know lots of people read lots of books and they're like, I want to be an author
because
too.
I'm a storyteller, not an historian.
Oh right, that's an easy question to say.
No, but it's true. Look, if you want to know about the Saxon period, there's a terrific book written by a guy called Stenton, for a start. I mean, there's all sorts of books. And I can almost promise you that they won't keep you awake at night. That when you get to the end of chapter 2, you're not going to say, oh God, I can't put the light out, I've got to keep reading. My job is to make you tired. Because you can't put it down there. I've got to find out what happens. You do a good
job of it, I will tell you.
And I change history all the time. But you have to confess in the historical note. Now, because it depends what you're writing. I mean, I've just finished a book about Uhtred. And really, it is mostly imagination because we don't know much about what happened in that year. But that's great for me because I can just make it up as I go along.
Free license.
I'm a storyteller. I'm not an historian.
And how do you decide what you want to write about then, the period? Like, do you read about the history first and I want to create a story out of this? Yeah, that's the first one.
Well, with this one, it all happened because I very carelessly lost my real parents when I was born. And then when I was 58, I met my real father for the first time and discovered that he came from a family. The surname was Outred, Oughttred, and they traced their family tree all the way back to Northumbria to Uhtred. And although the Uhtred that I write about it certainly is not real in the sense that we don't know much about the 8th, 9th, 10th century Uhtred's, we've got his signature on a charter or two. That gave me my little story. So this is actually a story about a fictional member of my family.
So I want to know, how long does it take to write historical fiction? Because we know it's epic, and it must be so hard to have an epic history size technically, and then condense.
I guess, it really depends who you are and what you're doing. I mean, I'm splitting it up. I mean, there have been 8 or 9 books in the series so far. I'm not quite sure. I think I've just finished the 9th. So I mean, yes, if you put all 9 together, you've got, I don't know, you've got 1 million words or more, and that's an epic. But we've chopped it all up. I generally write, it takes about 6 months to write a book. But I mean, behind that, there is, I hope, a lifetime of research.
Brilliant. That makes me feel so bad that my dissertation's taking so long to write. Are you feeling quite hopeful for more people reading historical fiction? Because I know, obviously, people tend to get scared by the sizes of them. My generation, I know. And do you think there's quite a nice hope about it being dramatised? So we've seen I'm a bookseller, and I've seen a lot of people suddenly buying Hilary Mantel because of the historical dramatisation of that production. Are you quite hopeful that will happen with historical fiction in yours?
Well, it already has. I mean, the nice thing is that it obviously happened with the Sharp books. I'm very, very lucky. I mean, I seem to have a solid number of readers. But yes, I'm sure more people will read it. I mean, they're going to see Alexander Treyman playing Uhtred. They're going to want to know more about Uhtred, and the only place to find that out until the next series comes out is to go to the books. But there does seem to have been an explosion of historical fiction. When I started writing it, it was actually not a particularly popular genre. It's got more and more popular over the last 30, 40 years.
And you started writing that in America, didn't you?
Writing, yeah, when I married an American and couldn't get a work permit, and so I had to do something to earn a living which didn't need the US government's permission.
That's a wonderful way to get into writing.
I don't know if it's a wonderful way, but it's a desperate way.
That's normally where the greatest work comes from, usually. But you said in another interview how much you appreciated the title of The Great, and you mentioned how Queen Elizabeth should have been a certain great member.
I do. I think Elizabeth I should be Elizabeth the Great, but there is no Nobel committee that awards this. It is up to history to a sort of general thing, and we say Alfred the Great, and quite rightly he deserves that. But as I say, there is no Nobel committee to do this, so I doubt Elizabeth will ever be called Elizabeth the Great, but she certainly deserves to be.
Would you ever write a serial of that period, perhaps?
I don't know. The Tudors have been done an awful lot. I mean, for a start, there's the goddess herself, Hilary Mantel. I know she's not an Elizabeth, but so I don't know. Maybe one day.
I hope so, because I really enjoy that. If not, I will. Thank you ever so much for joining me today, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I can't wait for the dramatisation. If you haven't read The Last Kingdom, please do. I also love the Holy Grail series, if you haven't read that either, and the Arthurian series. But thank you ever so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, that's brand new to me.
What are you writing?
Oh, I'm doing a dissertation on the use of classicism in modernist political fiction.
Good luck.
Thank you very much, I need it. Do you mind if I look at my note? Pardon me. No. Thank you very much.
Sorry, actually.
No, it's fine.
A dissertation on the classical England.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. Oh, sorry, I've flushed up again. May I do it again? I'll cut and edit it all together, thank you. Sorry about that. I get nervous at the end of the production. Oh, that's true, thank you. Mary's very cheeky and asked you to sign my edition of The Last.